Hello, my name is Stephen Stocking and welcome to my reflective presentation. This is the first assignment in the MA Photography course at Falmouth Flexible. During this presentation I hope to examine my past, present and future photographic practice and experience, my motivations, objectives and look at my inspirations. I'll answer the question of why I decided to study for a Masters at Falmouth, and I will offer a short insight into my research project ideas. Early years. My childhood and the photographs that encapsulate my early life. I was born in 1963 Colchester. Times were tough for my parents and they struggled financially during my formative years. Although these were frugal times, I have wonderful memories of them. Over the next few slides I will examine some of my old family photographs that mean everything to me and encapsulates how I remember my childhood. Parents, love and sacrifice. Despite my parents starting married life and a young family with such a meagre income, they always managed to keep my sister and I well clothed and nourished. In fact, my mum was an amazing cook. She didn't work though until we were old enough to be at home without her, and so they relied on my dad's wages alone. They had some ups and downs in married life, but they always had an unbreakable love that lasted until they passed away. I miss them dearly. Cool. Well, I thought so. As I matured into a teenage teddy boy, I stepped up to my first SLR. It was a Fujica ST605N and I loved it. My photographs left a lot to be desired, but the roots were bedding in for what was to become my lifelong love. I've included this photograph because it's the only one I have of my quiff and favourite Gene Vincent t-shirt, but the real blessing is though, it's my most treasured picture of my nan, Dodd and I. Beginnings. My first forays into photography. These 4 photographs were the first I made as a child with my Kodak Instamatic camera. They are similar to millions of others made in the 60s and 70s but gather more significance as each year passes. The majority of subjects in this slide are no longer with us and I myself will be 60 years old shortly. In addition to being wonderful keepsakes, they also give me context and clarity to my memories that seem distorted by time. Experience. My practice developing. Landscapes. My technical knowledge improved over the years and I made countless landscape photographs. As the new millennium dawned, so did my transition from film to digital. I soon got hooked on processing my images without posting slides to a lab or setting up my temporary darkroom every time I shot with black and white. I could dodge and burn, add filters and utilise many time-saving features which facilitated almost instant results. Experience. My practice developing. Towns and cities. After landscapes, my practice changed direction to cityscapes and architecture. Not technical work, but aesthetic fine art photography. I challenged my traditional shooting formats and concentrated on composition before I clicked the shutter. I developed a sense of whether the final image would be square, landscape or portrait, colour or monochrome, before I even committed the camera to exposing the image. Experience. My practice developing. Abstract. In my photographic journey I gained ideas and inspiration for photography magazines. One such genre was abstract photography. I concentrated on small areas of a subject to bring out shape and form using geometry, light and shadows. To this day I still photograph geometric shapes when I view them, although perhaps not with the same enthusiasm as in earlier work. Epiphany, the decisive moment. The most significant change and epiphany, if you like, in my photographic practice came around 9 years ago. I read an article on Henri Cartier-Bresson. Unfortunately, I no longer remember which article it was. However, the impact it had on my future photography is very much fresh in my mind. 8 minutes is not enough time to tell all the reasons his work inspired me, but I shall endeavour to do so over the next slide or two. Epiphany, the inspiration of a master. This first figure is among Cartier-Bresson's most iconic images. The photographer puts into context his now legendary phrase, the decisive moment. Compositionally unusual, Bresson places the man leaping out of the frame, which adds a tension that would otherwise be missing. However, the moment Cartier-Bresson hit the shutter release, a fraction of a second before the right foot breaks the water, is where the real tension is in the photograph. One moment, one chance, inspirational. Inspiration, images that changed my thinking. The bullseye perspective of an attendant watching the action through a small window is countered by the faceless but identically attired man behind him. It is a complex composition that was inspired by a love of cubism. The second photograph is an early example of Cartier-Bresson's photography, which shows his desire to give a sense of geometry and order with the classic spiral lines to lead our eyes to the cyclist. I never tire of looking at this photograph. Exploring photographers, Don McCullin. To highlight all the photographers who have inspired me would take way too much time, but at the very top of the list is Don McCullin. This photograph of the shell-shocked American Marine was the first of McCullin's work I saw. The tension in his hands and eyes encapsulates his state of mind. According to McCullin, this was one of several frames he made and the man didn't blink once. I'm not brave enough to emulate McCullin, however his work continually inspires me. Exploring photographers, Vivian Maier. Vivian Maier is the antithesis of Don McCullin. Her vision of capturing human behaviour, though, is as valid as Diane Arbus, Jerry Winogrand and John Free, all great photographers whom I admire. Maier never shared her photography, but she has books and exhibitions of her work produced posthumously after being bought at an auction. I don't think she would have approved, though, had she been alive. I'm thankful we can view them, though, and have been greatly influenced by Maier's photography. After the Epiphany, influence in practice. As alluded to in the previous slide, these two photographs are amongst those influenced by Vivian Maier's reflection self-portraits. There are differences, of course. I'm not the subject here, but I made a series of images that included a reflection of me pressing the shutter to add a layer of interest and pose the question, was this deliberate? There is a voyeuristic quality to these photographs that adds attention to an otherwise banal interaction, which appeals to me. Current practice, street photography. In these two images I made use of colour to give a strong message to the viewer where to direct their gaze. The red and orange in the first photograph frames the older gentleman rather than distract the eye, and there's also a feeling of respect the two sons are showing to their elder. In the second photograph I was using colour to draw our eye to the workman looking out of the frame. I think this adds a sense of mystery and humour. I don't think it would have worked though had it not been for the old man attached to the wall behind. Critical thinking, looking forward. In the short time I've studied on this MA photography course, my perceptions on the subject have irreversibly changed for the better. I'm beginning to read photographs, research into the images I view, and look to other media for inspiration too. As I close this presentation, I will briefly touch on my project ideas for the upcoming year and look forward to travelling on this journey of vision and discovery.